In the earliest dusk of a forgotten age, when the earth still trembled to the tread of gods and kings alike, there stood a mighty empire whose borders kissed the horizon of desert and sea. The dust of that empire still falls through our fingers, and yet one tomb remains, shrouded in rumor, sealed by centuries, and haunted by every soul who dared cross its threshold. This is the story of how a king's tomb killed everyone who opened it. It begins in the reign of a ruler whose name is lost now to legend. He was called in his lifetime the Golden Sovereign, adorned in glinting plate and crowned in azure, a monarch who ruled over a land of red sands and black nights. His priests whispered of his favor with the gods, sun chariots, desert storms, the flicker of lightning upon the dunes. Yet when his time came, the king removed his crown, laid down his scepter, and entered the dimension of death, as all kings must. What followed would echo through millennia. His tomb was carved beneath the sandstone cliffs of a ridge that overlooked the Emerald River, deep in the heart of his realm. The builders hollowed the rock, carved vast halls of stone, and placed within it treasures of gold and lapis, walls painted with scenes of a journey through the underworld. At the very threshold they inscribed warnings: "Let none disturb this rest, for here the king shall dwell for eternity, and those who break the seal shall meet a wrath beyond mortal ken." We know from other tombs that these curses were sometimes real. Inscriptions in Old Kingdom Egypt proclaim, "As for all men who shall enter this my tomb, impure, there will be judgment, an end shall be made for him." So it was that the Golden Sovereign was laid to rest. The seals were set. The sand returned. The desert wind scoured the cliff face until the entrance was hidden and the tomb almost forgotten by the living. Generations passed, the empire collapsed, and the tomb lay silent. But no rest ever remains undisturbed forever. In a modern age of excavation and ambition, men with pickaxes and lamps ventured into the past. They sought the tomb of this ancient king, drawn by legends of treasure, power, and fear. They found it where the rock fractured into a hidden gorge, the mapmakers long since abandoning their names, the locals whispering only that the site was cursed. A foreign expedition leader arrived under the hot sun with camera and chisel, resolved to open the sealed door. At dusk, the torchlight danced upon carved hieroglyphs, the name of the king, the eyes of the falcon god, the god of the dead crouched in relief. And then the wooden door groaned, the hinges rusted by centuries. What happened thereafter is a tale of dread. The door swung open and the air exhaled, dust older than human memory, a breath taken out of time. They stepped inside and touched walls colored with pigment that had not seen light in centuries. Statues of the gods stood sentinel, the jackal head of Anubis, the hawk of Horus, the serpent of Wadjet coiling in hieroglyphic warning. Mirrors of polished bronze, golden scepters, the throne of the king himself, standing as if awaiting his return. The team ventured deeper, through a corridor into the burial chamber. The sarcophagus lay before them, carved white stone and lid of alabaster, the king's name inscribed in gold. They lifted the lid. In that hushed moment, the tomb seemed to inhale. A wind stirred in the chamber though no window yet existed. Flickering lamplight cast ominous shadows. A dull thud echoed. Some of them coughed, dust in their lungs, the air stale and thick. They recorded and photographed the grandeur, yet beneath the wonder something ancient stirred. Within days of the first intrusion, calamity struck. The expedition leader fell ill with a fever though he had been hale before. The local laborers reported nightmares, waking in sweats at the memory of a black jackal figure. Another member of the team drowned in the river though his boat was on calm water, another died from a fall in the night, stumbling as if drawn by invisible hands. Rumors circulated, the tomb is alive, the king's wrath awakened. In time, the story leaked into newspapers, dramatized into the legend of a tomb that kills. But historians caution that real evidence is thinner than the myth. Some insiders note that the curse of the pharaohs, including that surrounding Tutankhamun, was largely sensationalized after the discovery of his tomb. Yet even that earlier case gives precedent to tomb inscriptions that threaten ruin to grave robbers. What, then, did the team actually uncover once the Golden King's veil was drawn back? There beneath the lid they found a mirror of polished bronze coated in a fine black film, glyphs of a ritual long since unknown, and a jar containing a mixture of resin and something the chemists later could not fully identify. The tomb's walls bore scenes of the king in judgment before the gods, scales of heart and feather, crocodiles and serpents waiting by the gates of the underworld, the dead punished for false deeds. One inscription clearly read, "He who disturbs this chamber shall enter darkness beyond night, and his name shall rot in the land of the living." Whether it was original to the tomb or carved in a later age, it carried a vibration of dread. The scientists brought in instruments, air samples were taken. They detected traces of mold and spores, dust older than the living memory. Some speculated about gases released from sealed coffins, ammonia, hydrogen sulfide, the ancient air that had been contained for thousands of years. Similar theories were leveled around Tutankhamun's tomb. Dormant molds like Aspergillus flavus can cause lung damage in sealed tombs. Could it be that the king's tomb did not kill by spectral hand, but by the tiny claws of microorganisms and the slow horror of poison in ancient air? Possibly. But myth outpaces cold science in memory. Because after this first expedition, subsequent teams entered. Some left triumphant, but many did not. One archaeologist, waking in the early hours, heard the scrape of stone shoes in the dark and died a year later of what doctors called mysterious paralysis. Another succumbed to an infection and went blind in one eye, claiming he saw the king's mask opening and closing before the final moment. The local workers refused to return, whispering that the jackal god had risen and claimed blood. They refused to carry the golden artifacts out by night. Some of the treasure vanished, stolen in the gloom, and those who touched it fell ill. Word traveled far. The tomb of the Golden Sovereign became a magnet for thrill-seekers and a death trap in equal measure. Tourists were barred, the site sealed partially once more, sealed again by sand and neglect. The artifacts were transferred to the National Museum, but the chamber remained, sealed and forbidden. Visitors would peer through barred grates, the statues of gods still gazing, the golden lid still shimmering in torchlight when storms of sand threatened the door. And the inscription still lay. The ancient curse, the last hope of the king to protect his journey, to deter the living from disturbing his eternal rest. Yet there remained a deeper mystery: why did the tomb claim so many lives? Was it simply coincidence, disease, crumbling rock, or was there something more esoteric at work? Some researchers suggest that the builders intentionally locked in more than just the king. Perhaps they sealed a ritual danger, a magically charged artifact, or even a curse laid by the king himself, a pact with the gods to punish those who disturbed his peace. In the valley before the tomb the sands are marked by odd depressions, and local legend claims that at an equinox the wind whistles through the ridges like a cry of anguish. At night, when lamps are lit in adjacent ridges, the air carries a fragrance of resin and the faint echo of a gong. Whether these are natural phenomena or echoes of ritual, the tomb refuses to lie quiet. In the archives one dusty papyrus fragment speaks of the Golden Sovereign's final vow: "I have shaken the sky with my scepter. I shall conquer the land of the dead. And if my rest be disturbed, I call upon the Scorpion Queen and the Black Lion to rise and rend the blood of the intruder." That fragment may be a poetic echo, or a genuine invocation. But it underscores the ancient belief that kings did not die but transformed, they became gods, or walked with gods, and therefore their tombs were not mere storehouses of the dead but portals to the divine. Disturb them at your peril. The psychological weight of that belief cannot be underestimated. The men and women who entered the chamber did not simply open a door, they broke a boundary between life and death, between the world of the gods and the world of the living. The builders understood that boundary.
They built labyrinths of corridors, false doors, mirror chambers to reflect the lamplight and confuse the intruder. They sealed heavy blocks of granite, built corridors with angled ceilings so that sound echoed strangely, and left inscriptions in red paint warning of venomous serpents and fierce gods. The combination of architecture, ritual, and the desert's cruelty became a trap. A minor slip in darkness, and the corridor might collapse. A breath of toxic air, and the lungs fill. A moment of hubris, and the gods awaken in their stone forms. In one corridor, an experiment recorded that the temperature fell 3 degrees when a lamp was lit, as though the chamber inhaled. The dust filtration system, so to speak, of the tomb had failed. The corridor walls glistened with a film of ancient moisture, and a single drip echoed for minutes in the silence. That corridor was later sealed again. Modern archaeologists declared the site unstable. Yet the legend had already spread. The phrase, "King's Tomb That Kills," circulated in academic papers, travelogues, fiction, and even horror films. But behind the sensational headline lies something more subtle and tragic: the intersection of ambition and mortality. Archaeology is the triumph of the living over the forgotten. But here the living came, lifted the lid, and many never left. The tomb is both monument and mausoleum, both treasure house and trap. The golden sovereign's demise was altered by his tomb to become the tomb's own legend. And what of the golden scepters, and the mask, and the sealed jars? In one of the side chambers, the archaeologists found a small shrine to the Scorpion Queen, an obscure goddess of vengeance and night. A jar bearing her emblem was broken in the initial looting. The contents spilled out, black granules shimmering under the torchlight like broken stars. The jar's inscription read in ancient tongue, "Pour to the darkness, awaken the night mother, and let no one walk free who bears my seed." Was that a magical curse? A symbolic warning? Or simply poetic vanity? We cannot know. Nevertheless, the deaths continued. A researcher climbing a ladder to inspect a relief lost his footing and plunged into the depths of the sand-cut shaft. Others contracted obscure fevers that baffled the Cairo hospital. A guard went insane and leapt into the source of the river. Locals spoke of shadows that followed them home, of golden light flickering in the desert at dusk, of a jackal's cry when the winds shifted. The archaeologists covered their ears, looked at their watches. Some laughed it off. Others wept in their sleep. The tomb was no longer just an archaeological site. It had become a myth in motion. Into the 20th century, the National Museum displayed the artifacts: the golden mask, the throne, the scepters. But the tomb itself remained behind barriers. The nation's archaeo-ministry declared it unsafe. Some became convinced the danger lay not in magical vengeance, but in structural collapse, in dust, in ancient mold, in gases. One study of sealed burial chambers found that molds such as Aspergillus flavus can cause lung hemorrhage. Still, mere science cannot extinguish the hunger of myth. Because when visitors stand at the barred window and gaze into the burial chamber, they feel something: a weight of silence, a suggestion of watchful gods, a promise that even in death a king can reign. Yet the story refuses to end. In recent years, a new team, using digital scanners and non-intrusive tools, approached the sealed tomb once more. Through the sensors, they detected an antechamber hidden behind a false wall, its doorway masked by a block of granite and desert detritus. They didn't open it yet, too much risk. A member of that team said in his logbook, "I felt the air change when I placed the scanner. For a moment I thought I heard a gong." Whether that was desert echoes or something more, the tomb still holds its secret. And so the legend persists. This tomb of the Golden Sovereign, sealed for thousands of years, waiting in the dark beneath the desert ridges, remains an object of fascination and dread. It is a reminder that the past is not always inert. Sometimes it reaches out. The king hoped for eternity, the makers built for eternity, and the living who disturb eternity pay a price. The tomb did not simply kill those who entered it, transformed them into part of its own story. Their names, their deaths, the fear they carried home, they all belong to the tomb now. As you watch this documentary, imagine the torchlight flickering in that ancient corridor, the hieroglyphs flickering in the fire glow, the jackal god perched on his pedestal, guarding the threshold of the unknown. Listen for the soft drip of water in the silence, the desert wind sighing through the ridges, the echo of a closing lid, of a boundary restored. And ask yourself, in the face of the unknown, is it curiosity that kills, or the tomb that awakens? Perhaps the truth lies somewhere between. The vault of a king, the curse of the gods, the modern hand that reached too deep. Perhaps one day a final door will open, and the chamber will yield its last secret, and the world will finally understand. Until then, the tomb remains, and so does the story. The end.